So for a while now, we've heard all sorts of rumors on just exactly how Spider-Man is going to actually be portrayed and what type of element, what his character is going to be like. But it's all just been that. It's been rumors, no real talk by the directors. Of course, the directors I'm referring to is the Russo brothers, who are of course going to be introducing the newest version of Spider-Man to us in Captain America Civil War. Now, Joe and Anthony Russo actually go into details on some of the, things that surround Spider-Man is the best way to say it, and how they're going to portray it. So this is probably going to be a little bit of a longer video, but if you guys stick through it, I'm going to try to go over everything and give my thoughts on what I really think about it and what they're saying here. So the first thing they said is we had to go back to the things that excite us about him as a character when we were younger. Now, of course, I think to a lot of us, that's a lot of the, times when we were exposed to Spider-Man. When you're a child, you see Spider-Man, you see the cartoons, you see the comics, and to a lot of the, guys that are directing these movies now, such as the Russo brothers, when they would have been reading Spider-Man as kids, he was in high school. He was a teenager, and they were pretty much living their lives alongside Peter Parker. So, obviously when they saw the movies, they didn't really represent that. In a good way. The Sam Raimi Spider-Man, they touch upon it, and then he's quickly gone. It's about like 20 minutes of the movie. The Amazing Spider-Man tries to dabble in it. By the time the second one opens, he's already graduating. So we never really had time to go into that. And they say they want to, explore that important component of the character when he's in high school, burdened with the incredible powers and responsibilities of having them, which once again, this makes sense. One of the most appealing aspects to me anyway of Spider-Man is the aspect of how he has to balance everything and how he has to react to everything going on around him in a teenager's mind. Because obviously I think even, a lot of us that are older that watch this channel, and some of you younger viewers can really attest to, sometimes when you're younger, you don't really make the, smartest decisions in life. And those will come back to haunt you if they're terrible. And, I think that's an important aspect of it. And of course, with that comes, with great power comes great responsibility, which is to me one of the best quotes of all time, because it is true. And I really wanted to explore that element of it, and I'm hoping that's what they're saying here. And then they go on to say that's really different, the differentiation, the separating factor from him, from every other Marvel Universe character that they have currently in there, every other superhero. And to them, it was very important that they casted someone as close to the age of a high schooler as they could. Obviously, when you look at Tom Holland, he looks very young. I mean, he's older, like he's 19, going to be turning 20, but he looks very young. He looks like he's 13, so it makes sense why they went that route. They wanted someone younger, and this makes a lot of sense. They want to put him in high school, and he has to be the kid. He has to be us. He has to be the fanboy in this movie and all his other movies to the Avengers, but he does have to have that, kid mentality. And when you're looking at it young and everything like that, he is very different than everybody else, because obviously Captain America's soldier, you have Iron Man, who's this billionaire. What is Peter Parker? Well, he's a loser student who can't get a girlfriend, and he's a nerd, and everybody picks on him. So there's your the separating factor. So then they also elaborate on that, saying in the previous films, they had adults playing high schoolers, but they wanted a little more authenticity when they were casting, going on about the energy and charisma about the character, and how his confidence would be and how his insecurities would show up. And honestly, if you look at Tom Holland during the interviews, and I've said this multiple times, that kid looks odd. Like, he gives off this nerd quality, and he's so humble and awkward when he's interviewing. He's just smiling and like bumbling around. To me, that's Spider-Man. That's Peter Parker right there. Sure, he might not look as good as Andrew Garfield looked, as Spider-Man, because he looked like Peter Parker, but to me, if you can get the personality down, and if you're just awkward enough and they put you in that situation, and looking at him and how he's grew up watching the Avengers movies, he's going to probably be a little starstruck when he's there alongside Captain America. And to me, he's I probably see him fanboying, and that's going to translate into his actual, emotion on the screen, which makes a whole lot of sense because that's what Spider-Man is. He's a fanboy. And then now regarding some of Peter Parker's surroundings, they say to them it was important that the actor felt contemporary, and I'll explain what that means in a little bit. Because of the other films they portrayed, how he lived in the world he lived in, they honored the comic book terms in terms of those choices. And then they make a really good example that I really love here, and this is always one of the problems I had, and they say in the Tobey Maguire and the Raimi movies, Spider-Man, he was living in an expensive house, and you look at the house, and you just kind of look at pricing of homes in the neighborhood he was living in and what it looks like, and that would be expensive, and they say here, they want to reflect on what would a single income family be able to afford in New York, especially that it's just him, who's still a teenager, and just his aunt living in New York. So speaking about that, of course, the whole contemporary thing they mentioned, this makes a whole lot of sense. When you look at New York, that is one of the most expensive cities. I've been there 4 or 5 years in a row now for New York Comic Con, and I go and I just look at everything, and I like to, people that watch this show and watch CBC, especially the podcast, how much I love numbers, so I love to look at everything and kind of get a scope, and New York is one of the most expensive places I've ever seen. A night stay in a hotel that's not crappy will cost you $350 to $400, and that's still nowhere, not in Times Square where it's the safest, right? It's 10 minutes out in Hell's Kitchen, so it kind of puts everything in perspective. So when you look at back how Sam Raimi and Andrew Garfield and everything, they had these elaborate homes and, just Uncle Ben working. That was never really believable. It didn't strike me as that's real. And yeah, the Raimi film kind of played along with Aunt May can't afford this, but still, I wasn't really feeling it. It felt very much like a throwback. And now when they say they're going to, explore the contemporary elements, what that means is they want a person who reflects today. If you go to New York right now and you talk to someone who's living just with one parent, living in New York, and they're a teenager, they're not going to have the biggest apartment. They're going to have a very small apartment. It's going to be cramped. It's going to be in a terrible neighborhood. It's going to be a reflection of the world we live in, and you're probably not going to like what you see there. Pretty much what they're saying here is, expect Spider-Man to live in a shithole. Expect something equivalent to Daredevil's neighborhoods. Now, no, I'm not saying he's going to live in Hell's Kitchen. I don't want anybody to mistake that. But what I'm saying is that's a real representation of New York in the MCU. When you look at the Avengers, when you look at Captain America and Iron Man, those guys are the playboys. They don't look down at the ground floor and go, oh, look at all these homeless people. Look at all this, starvation and stuff. That's going to be a real world for Peter Parker, and he's going to have to live in this world, and we're going to kind of see through his point of eyes the hero and what they stand for and how his world is completely different when he's, at home. And then they do quickly talk about, obviously, that they're bringing him into the third, Captain America movie. The second one, which is set in modern day in a contemporary world, which is, a little more of a hardcore, a little more of a gritty world, and you can't obviously just go with something like The Amazing Spider-Man, which, had a lizard character running around, or something like, the original Spider-Man. That world wouldn't fit in because everything has to aesthetically fit in. And they kind of talk about that here and how it's like a hardcore, contemporary version of everything. And, it's how they're going to bring this character to kind of stand alongside these heroes. Now, here's something where they get really interesting, and they say, we're not trying to, really do a crazy interpretation of Spider-Man, essentially is what they said. Raimi's movies are fantastic, they say. They love them. I made 2 of the best movies they've seen, 2 of the best comic books, and, some of their favorite movies right there. But he made very strong choices when he went with the movie, the color palette, the standpoint of the costume, the execution, the camera work, the how they honored what the comic book felt like. And when you look at Spider-Man, and I always say this, and you guys know that Spider-Man 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's in my top 25, and no other comic book movie is. And Spider-Man 2 is a perfect example of the 60s campy Spider-Man, brought to life. Like, it feels like the old Spider-Man comics, and when you look at it in that way, that's what I think a lot of people miss, that Spider-Man movies by Sam Raimi weren't made to honor the modern day comics. They were made as a tribute to the ones that came before, which is why I never understand the criticism against Sam Raimi, because he made a very classic movie. If you go look at Spider-Man 1 and 2 today, they are still classic movies, but in that regard that they still hold up their own and they have this very unique feel and camera work. When you look at the Amazing Spider-Man franchise, they're a byproduct of the year they came in, and they already have dated and showed their age and camera work and everything, and how they're a product of that post-Nolan era, which is already left behind, and it's kind of just left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth for trying to make something too realistic when it shouldn't be. Essentially what they're saying here is they're not going to do either of those. They're going to make sure that their Spider-Man is built and shaped around the current universe that we're seeing him live in. So don't expect them to be acting or looking or doing the same things as Sam Raimi or the Amazing Spider-Man, because that character just doesn't fit into this aesthetic that they've already built. And then they go on to say they're trying to honor the nature and the natural feeling of our world today, the reality we live in, everything that surrounds it, the technology we have, obviously social media, the internet, and everything like that. Now, this to me, honestly, once again, this is on point. Once again, the Sam Raimi movies, they were not made to be representative of the year they made in. They were made like Batman 89. They're a time capsule movie that borrows from everything and makes their own universe that feels unique to itself, and you couldn't mix anything really in there. The Amazing Spider-Man tried to go the hardcore realistic route. It failed. They tried to go a more comic route like Sam Raimi in the second one, and that failed too, and we're now where we are here. They're saying essentially they're going to find a well-rounded way to do it here, where they're going to stay true to the core element of the character, yet he has to fit into today's society. Obviously Peter Parker, is he going to be like, oh, the Daily Bugle, they're right there? Who the hell, really does the newspaper thing anymore? So Peter Parker's probably going to have to be evolved in that aspect, is what I'm gathering here, which, honestly, once again, that's fine by me, and I perfectly understand what they're saying here, so it really works. So hopefully you guys liked everything I had to say here that they were saying, and my thoughts, interpretations of what I think about it. So you guys let me know your thoughts on all this down below. So thank you for watching the video, and if you guys like what you saw, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you haven't already, check out some of these other great videos we have on the channel. Just click the annotation right there, it'll take you to them. Thank you for watching, guys, and have a good one.